In a quiet suburban town, nestled between rows of identical houses and tree-lined streets, stood Maplewood High School, a place where teenagers navigated the ups and downs of adolescence. Among them was Maya Johnson, a 16-year-old girl whose presence often went unnoticed by most students. Maya wasn't loud or flashy. She didn't cheer at football games or hang out with the popular crowd. Instead, she preferred spending her free time writing poetry in the corner of the library or sketching pictures during lunch breaks. Her natural curly hair framed her face like a crown, something she wore proudly despite the whispers behind her back. Maya's love for poetry had started when she was younger, scribbling short verses in a worn-out notebook gifted to her by her grandmother. Over the years, those scribbles turned into heartfelt poems about life, dreams, and struggles. Writing became her safe haven, a way to make sense of the world around her. But while it brought her comfort, it also made her stand out in ways she hadn't anticipated. At Maplewood High, standing out wasn't always celebrated. In fact, it often invited unwanted attention. One group of students, led by Whitney Carter, seemed particularly fixated on Maya. Whitney was the quintessential queen bee of the HOA school, confident, stylish, and surrounded by loyal followers who hung on to her every word. She ruled the hallways with an iron fist, deciding who was in and who was out. Unfortunately for Maya, Whitney had decided she was decidedly out. It wasn't just that Maya dressed differently or spent more time reading than gossiping. It was her quiet confidence that irked Whitney the most. Maya didn't try to fit in, and somehow, that bothered Whitney deeply. The bullying began subtly. At first, comments here and there, "Why does she wear her hair like that, or does she even own normal clothes?" were whispered just loudly enough for Maya to overhear. Then came the laughter when she walked past their table in the cafeteria. Some days they'd mockingly imitate her voice if she answered a question in class. Maya tried not to let it get to her. She reminded herself that their words couldn't hurt her unless she let them. Still, each insult chipped away at her resolve, leaving her feeling smaller and more isolated. But Whitney wasn't satisfied with mere teasing. She wanted to prove a point, to show everyone, including Maya, that she held all the power. So, one crisp autumn afternoon, as the final bell rang signaling the end of sixth period, Whitney hatched a plan. She motioned to two of her closest friends, Tessa and Brianna, and told them to follow her. They knew exactly what this meant. It was time to take things up a notch. Maya, meanwhile, had no idea what awaited her. After grabbing her books from her locker, she headed toward the girls' bathroom on the second floor. It was a routine stop before heading to the bus loop. The hallway was nearly empty now, save for a few stragglers rushing to catch their rides home. As she pushed open the heavy door of the bathroom, Maya felt a flicker of unease but brushed it aside. She needed a moment alone to collect her thoughts before facing another long ride home. Moments later, the bathroom door swung open again, and Whitney stepped inside, flanked by Tessa and Brianna. Their entrance was deliberate, almost theatrical. The sound of their footsteps echoed off the tiled walls, breaking the silence. Maya froze, her heart skipping a beat. She recognized the smug look on Whitney's face immediately. This wasn't going to be a casual run-in, it was a confrontation. Whitney sauntered closer, her designer sneakers squeaking against the damp floor. Behind her, Tessa and Brianna exchanged nervous glances but said nothing. They were used to following Whitney's lead, even if they weren't entirely comfortable with where it might take them. For Maya, the situation felt surreal. She clutched her notebook tightly to her chest, as if it could shield her from whatever was coming next. Well, Whitney drawled, stopping a few feet away from Maya. Her tone dripped with disdain. "Look who we have here, little Miss Poet Princess hiding in the bathroom again." Maya didn't respond. She stared straight ahead, trying to steady her breathing. Her mind raced, searching for a way out of this predicament, but there was none. The bathroom was small, with only a row of stalls and sinks separating her from her tormentors. There was nowhere to go. Whitney smirked, clearly enjoying the upper hand. "You think you're so special, don't you?" she continued, taking another step forward. walking around like you're better than everyone else because you read books and write little poems. Still, Maya remained silent. She focused on keeping her expression neutral, refusing to give Whitney the satisfaction of seeing her fear. Inside, though, her stomach churned. She hated being cornered like this, hated feeling powerless. But she also knew that reacting impulsively would only make things worse. Tessa chimed in hesitantly, her voice softer than Whitney's but still cutting. "Yeah. And what's with your hair? Don't you know how ridiculous it looks?" Brianna laughed nervously, though her eyes darted toward the door as if she wished she could escape. "And your clothes? Are you trying to dress like some kind of artist or something?" The insults kept coming, each one designed to chip away at Maya's self-esteem. They mocked her choice of backpack, her thrift store jeans, and even the fact that she preferred peanut butter sandwiches over pizza for lunch. To an outsider, it might have sounded petty, but to Maya it felt suffocating. Each word landed like a punch, making it harder to breathe. Yet through it all, Maya refused to break. She stood there, her back pressed against the cold tile wall, holding onto her notebook like a lifeline. Her silence infuriated Whitney, who thrived on reactions. Without thinking, Whitney reached out and grabbed the notebook from Maya's hands. "Let's see what's so important in here," Whitney sneered, flipping it open. "Are these your precious poems? Let's hear one." For a brief moment, panic surged through Maya. That notebook contained her most personal thoughts, her fears, her hopes, her dreams. It was sacred to her, a piece of her soul poured onto paper. But as Whitney waved it triumphantly, Maya realized something crucial. She couldn't let them win. Not this time. Taking a deep breath, Maya looked Whitney directly in the eye. Her voice trembled slightly, but she spoke with conviction. "If you really want to hear one," she said, her words steady despite her racing heart, "then fine, I'll read it to you." Whitney paused, caught off guard by Maya's response. For once, she didn't know what to say. Curiosity, and perhaps a hint of guilt, kept her rooted in place. Tessa and Brianna exchanged uncertain glances, sensing that something significant was about to happen. Maya took a step forward, reclaiming her space. She held her ground, her posture radiating quiet strength. Slowly, she extended her hand, silently demanding her notebook back. To everyone's surprise, Whitney handed it over without argument. With trembling fingers, Maya opened the notebook to a marked page. She cleared her throat and began to read aloud. What followed was a poem unlike anything anyone expected, a raw, emotional masterpiece that spoke of pain, resilience, and the courage to rise above hatred. The words flowed effortlessly, weaving a tapestry of emotion that left the room utterly still. As Maya read, the atmosphere shifted. The taunts and jeers faded into the background, replaced by an unspoken understanding. For the first time, Whitney and her friends saw Maya not as a target, but as a person, a young woman brimming with talent and determination. And though none of them realized it yet, this moment would change everything for all of them. Maya's voice filled the bathroom, trembling at first but growing steadier with each word. The poem she had chosen to read wasn't just any piece. It was one she had written during one of her darkest moments, a time when the weight of loneliness and rejection felt unbearable. But instead of succumbing to despair, Maya had poured her heart into the verses, turning pain into something powerful. Now, as she stood face to face with Whitney and her friends, those words took on new life. "The poem began softly, almost like a whisper. I see your stares, hear your laughter." Maya read, her eyes fixed on the page, though she could feel everyone watching her. "But I wear my scars like armor, forged in fires you'll never understand." Whitney's smirk faltered slightly, her grip tightening on the edge of the sink behind her. She hadn't expected this, not from the quiet girl who always seemed so easy to intimidate. Tessa shifted uncomfortably, glancing at Brianna, whose usual confident demeanor now looked uncertain. They were used to seeing fear in their victim's eyes, but Maya showed none of that. Instead, there was a calm resolve about her, a quiet strength that made them uneasy. As Maya continued reading, Her voice grew stronger, filling the small space with an intensity that demanded attention. You call me strange, say I don't belong, but my difference is my song. It sings louder than your hate, brighter than your shadows. Each line hit like a wave, washing over the room and leaving silence in its wake. Whitney crossed her arms tightly across her chest, trying to mask her discomfort, but it was clear the words were affecting her. For the first time, she found herself questioning why she bullied others, why she felt the need to tear people down. Was it jealousy, boredom, or something deeper, something she didn't want to admit? Tessa was the first to break the tension. Her voice cracked as she whispered, That's really good." She sounded genuinely surprised, as if she hadn't expected Maya to possess such talent, or such courage. When Whitney shot her a sharp look, Tessa quickly added, whatever. But the damage was done. The cracks in their united front were starting to show. Brianna, who usually followed Whitney without question, hesitated before speaking up. "How do you even write stuff like that?" she asked, her tone softer than usual. There was curiosity in her voice, mixed with a hint of admiration. "It's kind of amazing." Maya paused mid-sentence, lowering the notebook slightly. She glanced at Brianna, then at Tessa, before finally meeting Whitney's gaze. For a moment, no one spoke. The air between them was heavy with unspoken emotions, shame, guilt, awe, and perhaps even a flicker of respect. "I write because it helps me survive," Maya said quietly, clutching the notebook to her chest once more. "When people like you try to make me feel small, I remind myself that I'm bigger than your cruelty. My words are mine, and they can't take that away from me." Her statement hung in the air, reverberating off the tiled walls. Whitney opened her mouth to respond, but no words came out. She wanted to lash back to regain control of the situation, but something stopped her. Maybe it was the sincerity in Maya's voice, or the realization that her words held truth. Whatever it was, Whitney couldn't deny the impact Maya's poem had left on all of them. For several long seconds, the only sound was the faint hum of the fluorescent lights overhead. Then, slowly, Whitney uncrossed her arms and took a step back. Her followers mirrored her movement, stepping aside as if creating a path for Maya to leave. No one said anything. They didn't need to. The confrontation had ended, but the aftermath lingered like smoke after a fire. Maya straightened her posture, tucking the notebook securely under her arm. She took a deep breath, feeling a mixture of relief and exhaustion wash over her. Part of her wanted to run out of the bathroom as fast as possible, but another part urged her to stay, to savor this rare victory. In that moment, she realized something important. She hadn't just survived this encounter. She had triumphed. By refusing to let Whitney's cruelty define her, she had reclaimed her power. As Maya walked toward the door, her footsteps echoed against the tiles, sounding louder than ever before. Before stepping through the threshold, she turned back briefly, meeting Whitney's gaze one last time. "If you ever want to talk about real strength," she said, her voice steady, "you know where to find me." And with that, she pushed, opened the door, and stepped out into the hallway, leaving Whitney, Tessa, and Brianna standing in stunned silence. None of them moved for what felt like an eternity. Finally, Tessa broke the quiet. "Wow," she murmured, shaking her head. "That was intense." Whitney didn't respond immediately. She leaned against the sink, staring at the spot where Maya had been standing moments ago. Her mind raced with conflicting thoughts. On one hand, she felt defensive, angry even, that someone like Maya had managed to shake her confidence. But, on the other hand, she couldn't ignore the nagging feeling that maybe, just maybe, she'd been wrong about her all along. "Whatever," Whitney muttered eventually, brushing past her friends. "Let's go." But as she exited the bathroom, her usual swagger was noticeably absent. Something inside her had shifted, though she wasn't ready to admit it yet. Meanwhile, Maya made her way to the bus loop, her heart still pounding but her spirit lifted. She replayed the scene in her head, marveling at how everything had unfolded. She knew this wasn't the end of the bullying. Whitney wouldn't change overnight. But today marked a turning point. Today she had proven to herself that she was capable of standing up for who she was, no matter how hard others tried to bring her down. By the time she boarded the bus, Maya's hands had stopped trembling. She sat near the window gazing outside as the vehicle pulled away from the school. Though she didn't realize it yet, her bravery had planted seeds of change, not just within herself, but also in those who had underestimated her. Little did she know, the story of what happened in the bathroom would spread quickly throughout Maplewood High, sparking conversations and inspiring others to reflect on their own actions. As the bus rumbled down the road, Maya opened her notebook again, flipping to a blank page. Her pen hovered above the paper for a moment before she began writing. This time the words flowed easily, capturing the essence of what had just transpired. She titled the poem, "Courage in the Mirror," and smiled softly to herself. If nothing else today had taught her that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is speak your truth, even when the world tries to silence you. The next day at Maplewood High felt different. Word had spread quickly about what happened in the bathroom, and Maya could feel the shift as soon as she stepped onto campus. Students who usually ignored her now glanced her way, some whispering, behind cupped hands, while others offered hesitant smiles. A few even approached her between classes, asking if the rumors were true, that she'd stood up to Whitney Carter and read a poem that left everyone speechless. At first, Maya didn't know how to react. She wasn't used to being the center of attention, especially not for something so personal. Writing poetry was her private sanctuary, a place where she processed emotions without judgment. But now, it seemed like the entire school wanted to know more about her and her work. During lunch, Maya sat alone at her usual table near the library, picking at her peanut butter sandwich. She kept her head down, hoping to avoid any further questions. However, her solitude was short-lived. To her surprise, Tessa slid into the seat across from her, fidgeting nervously with the strap of her backpack. "Hey," Tessa began, her voice soft and unsure. "Can I sit here?" Maya looked up, startled but curious. Tessa wasn't exactly known for breaking away from Whitney's group, and seeing her sitting there felt surreal. Still, Maya nodded slowly, setting her sandwich aside. "Sure," she replied, trying to keep her tone neutral. "What's up?" Tessa hesitated, glancing around as if checking for prying eyes. "I just wanted to say, what you did yesterday, that was really brave. Like, seriously impressive." Maya blinked, caught off guard by the compliment. "Thanks," she said cautiously. "I wasn't trying to impress anyone, though. I just needed to stand my ground." "I get that," Tessa admitted, her fingers twisting together anxiously. "But still, it takes guts to do something like that, especially when Whitney's involved. She doesn't usually let people talk back to her like that." Maya shrugged, leaning back slightly in her chair. Maybe she realized she can't control everything. Or everyone. Tessa chuckled nervously. "Yeah, well, don't expect her to admit it anytime soon. She's been acting weird ever since yesterday. Kind of quiet, actually." This revelation piqued Maya's interest. Whitney rarely stayed quiet about anything, let alone situations where she felt challenged. Could it be possible that Maya's words had truly gotten under her skin? The thought gave her a small sense of satisfaction, not because she wanted revenge, but because maybe, just maybe, Whitney was beginning to reflect on her actions over. The next few days, whispers about Maya's bravery continued to ripple through the school. Teachers took notice too. Mr. Alvarez, the English teacher who often encouraged students to express themselves creatively, pulled Maya aside after class one afternoon. "Maya, I heard about what happened," he said, his expression warm and encouraging. "Would you consider sharing your poetry with the rest of the school? We're hosting a talent showcase next month, and I think your work could inspire a lot of people." Maya hesitated, her stomach fluttering with nerves. Sharing her poetry with strangers, especially an entire auditorium full of them, felt daunting. But then she remembered the look on Whitney's face during that moment in the bathroom. The shock, the vulnerability, It proved that words had power even when spoken softly. "I'll think about it," Maya told him, offering a small smile. "Thanks for asking." As the days passed, Maya found herself gaining confidence. More students approached her, praising her courage and expressing admiration for her writing. Some even asked if they could borrow her notebook to read her poems, a request she politely declined. For the first time, Maya felt seen, not as the weird girl with curly hair and thrift store clothes, but as someone whose voice mattered. Meanwhile, Whitney wrestled with her own thoughts. Since the incident, in the bathroom, she couldn't shake the memory of Maya standing tall, reading those powerful lines aloud. It haunted her, not because she felt guilty exactly, but because it forced her to confront uncomfortable truths about herself. Why did she bully others? What made her feel the need to tear people down? These questions swirled in her mind, keeping her awake at night. One evening, as Whitney scrolled aimlessly through social media, she came across a post shared by one of her classmates. It was a photo of Maya, smiling shyly beside a sign-up sheet for the upcoming talent showcase. The caption read, "Go support our poet queen Amaya Johnson. Her words will change your life." Whitney stared at the screen, her chest tightening. She scrolled further, finding dozens of comments praising Maya's bravery and talent. Even some of her own friends had liked the post. Frustrated, Whitney tossed her phone onto her bed and buried her face in her hands. Why did everyone seem so obsessed with Maya all of a sudden? And why did it bother her so much? The answer came to her later that night as she lay in bed staring at the ceiling. It wasn't jealousy or spite driving her frustration. It was guilt. Deep down, Whitney knew she had crossed a line with Maya. She had mocked her, cornered her, and tried to strip her of her dignity, all because she was afraid. Afraid of being overshadowed, of losing her status as the queen bee. And now, Maya's quiet strength had exposed her insecurities for what they really were, hollow and meaningless. The following morning, Whitney arrived at school early, her heart pounding as she rehearsed what she planned to say. She spotted Maya near the lockers, organizing her books before first period. Taking a deep breath, Whitney walked over, stopping a few feet away. "Hey," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Maya turned, surprised to see Whitney standing there. "Hi," she replied cautiously, closing her locker. "What's up?" Whitney shifted uncomfortably, her gaze dropping to the floor. "Look, I wanted to say sorry for everything. What I did in the bathroom, and before that, it wasn't okay." Maya studied her for a moment, searching for sincerity in Whitney's expression. When she found it, she nodded slowly. "Okay," she said simply. "I accept your apology." Whitney looked up, relief washing over her face. "Thank you. I mean it. I'm really sorry." "I believe you," Maya replied, her tone calm but firm. "But forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. Words hurt, Whitney. Actions have consequences." Whitney swallowed hard, nodding again. "I know, and I'll try to do better. Starting today." With that, Whitney turned and walked away, leaving Maya standing by her locker. Though the conversation was brief, it carried weight. For the first time, Whitney had taken responsibility for her actions, and Maya had given her a chance to grow. As the weeks went by, subtle changes began to emerge within the school. Whitney stopped mocking Maya, and even defended her when others made snide remarks. Tessa and Brianna, inspired by Maya's resilience, started questioning their roles in the bullying and sought ways to make amends. Slowly but surely, the toxic dynamic that had once defined their relationships began to dissolve. For Maya, these shifts reinforced her belief in the power of self-expression. Her decision to share her poetry hadn't just changed her life. It had sparked a ripple effect, encouraging others to reflect on their behavior and strive for kindness instead of cruelty. And as Maya prepared for the talent showcase, she wrote a new poem, one dedicated to the idea that courage isn't about never feeling afraid. It's about facing fear head-on and refusing to let it define you. Little did she know, this poem would become the highlight of the event, leaving the audience in awe and cementing her legacy as a force for positive change at Maplewood High. The day of the talent showcase arrived, and the atmosphere at Maplewood High buzzed with excitement. Flyers advertising the event had been plastered all over the school for weeks, featuring bold letters that read, "Voices of Courage, a Night to Inspire." Students whispered eagerly in the hallways about who would perform. Musicians, dancers, comedians, and poets were all set to take the stage. But one name stood out more than any other: Maya Johnson. For Maya, the anticipation was both thrilling and nerve-wracking. She had spent countless hours perfecting her poem, rewriting lines until they felt just right. Her piece, titled "Courage in the Mirror," explored themes of self-acceptance, resilience, and the transformative power of standing up for oneself. It wasn't just a reflection of her own journey. It was a message she hoped would resonate with others. As she walked through the crowded auditorium before the show began, Maya noticed how many people greeted her warmly. Some students waved enthusiastically, while others stopped her to wish her luck. Even teachers smiled encouragingly, reminding her how proud they were of her bravery. Though she appreciated the support, it also made her feel exposed. Writing poetry in private was one thing. Performing it in front of hundreds of people was another entirely. Backstage, Maya paced nervously, clutching her notebook tightly. The murmur of the audience beyond the curtain filled the air, punctuated by occasional bursts of laughter or applause as each act took the stage. Mr. Alvarez, who had helped organize the event, approached her with a reassuring smile. "You're going to do great, Maya," he said, placing a hand on her shoulder. "Just remember, you've already inspired so many people just by being yourself. Tonight is just an opportunity to share that with even more." Maya nodded, taking a deep breath. "Thanks, Mr. Alvarez. I'll try not to mess it up." "You won't," he replied firmly. "And if you get nervous, just look for me in the front row. I'll be cheering louder than anyone." His words brought a small smile to Maya's face, calming her nerves slightly. Still, when the MC announced her name a few minutes later, her heart raced like never before. As she stepped onto the stage, the spotlight hit her, momentarily blinding her to the sea of faces below. For a brief second, panic threatened to creep in, but then she remembered why she was there. This wasn't about impressing anyone, it was about sharing her truth. She adjusted the microphone stand to her height and glanced down at her notebook, opening it to the marked page. Taking another steadying breath, she began to speak. "When you wake up every morning and see your reflection staring back at you," she started, her voice soft but clear. "Do you recognize the person looking back, or do you see someone shaped by the opinions of others?" The room fell silent, every eye fixed on Maya. Even those who hadn't paid attention during rehearsals leaned forward, captivated by her presence. She continued, her voice growing stronger with each line. "I used to hate my reflection. I saw flaws where there should have been beauty, weakness where there should have been strength. But then I learned something important. Courage isn't born from perfection. It's forged in moments of vulnerability, when we choose to rise despite our fears." Her words flowed effortlessly, weaving together vivid imagery and raw emotion. She spoke of the times she'd been mocked, cornered, and made to feel invisible, and how those experiences had taught her to find power within herself. She described the bathroom confrontation with Whitney, not to shame anyone, but to highlight the importance of using one's voice to reclaim dignity. By the time she reached the final stanza, tears glistened in her eyes, though her voice remained steady. "So today I look in the mirror and see someone different, someone brave, someone unafraid to shine, even when others try to dim my light. Because courage isn't loud, it's quiet. It's choosing to believe in yourself even when the world tells you not to." When she finished, the auditorium erupted into applause. People clapped, cheered, and even stood, moved by the depth of her words. Maya blinked, momentarily overwhelmed by the response. She hadn't expected this kind of reaction, but as she scanned the crowd, she saw faces filled with admiration, respect, and even gratitude. Among them sat Whitney, Tessa, and Brianna. Whitney's expression was unreadable, but her hands clapped along with everyone else. Tessa wiped away tears while Brianna gave Maya a small, genuine smile. In that moment, Maya realized her poem had done more than entertain. It had sparked a deeper understanding among her peers. After the showcase ended, Maya was swarmed by classmates eager to congratulate her. Some asked for copies of her poems, while others thanked her for inspiring them to embrace their own uniqueness. Even Principal Martinez approached her, praising her performance and encouraging her to continue sharing her gift. But perhaps the most unexpected encounter came later. That evening, when Maya was packing up her things backstage, Whitney appeared hesitantly, holding a folded piece of paper in her hands. "Hey," Whitney said softly, stopping a few feet away. "Can I talk to you for a minute?" Maya paused, surprised but curious. "Sure. What's up?" Whitney unfolded the paper and handed it to Maya. "I wrote this after hearing your poem tonight. I wanted to say thank you for showing me what real strength looks like." Maya accepted the paper, unfolding it carefully. Inside was a short note written in neat handwriting. "To Maya, thank you for teaching me that kindness matters, more than popularity. That courage isn't about tearing others down, it's about lifting yourself up. I'm working on being better, starting with myself. Whitney, Mai." Maya looked up, meeting Whitney's gaze. There was sincerity in her eyes, a vulnerability Maya hadn't seen before. She nodded slowly, offering a small smile. "That means a lot, Whitney. Thank you for writing this." Whitney exhaled, relief washing over her face. "No, thank you. You didn't have to forgive me earlier, but you did. And because of that, I'm trying to change, not just for you, but for everyone I've hurt." Their conversation marked a turning point, not just for Whitney, but for the entire school. Inspired by Maya's performance and Whitney's apology, several students formed a new club called Voices Unite, dedicated to promoting empathy, creativity, and anti-bullying initiatives. Maya became its founding member, leading workshops where students could express themselves through art, music, and poetry. Teachers noticed a shift in the school's culture too. Classrooms buzzed with discussions about acceptance and inclusion, while hallways once filled with whispers and judgment grew quieter, replaced by mutual respect. Even social dynamics began to evolve, with cliques dissolving in favor of friendships based on shared values rather than superficial similarities. For Maya, these changes reinforced her belief in the ripple effect of courage. By standing up for herself that day in the bathroom, she hadn't just reclaimed her power, she had ignited a movement. One that reminded everyone at Maplewood High that true strength lies not in dominance, but in compassion. And though challenges still lay ahead, Maya knew she had planted seeds of hope that would continue to grow long after graduation. As she closed her notebook and tucked it safely into her bag, Maya smiled to herself. Tonight had been proof that words, even the quietest ones, could change the world. Months passed at Maplewood High, and the impact of Maya's bravery continued to ripple through the school. The talent showcase had become a turning point, not just for Maya, but for everyone who witnessed it. What started as a single moment of courage in a bathroom had grown into something much bigger, a cultural shift that transformed how students treated one another. Maya, once an outsider, was now at the heart of this change. Her leadership role in Voices Unite gave her a platform to share her love for poetry while encouraging others to express themselves creatively. The club quickly gained popularity, attracting students from all walks of life. Some came to write songs or paint murals. Others joined simply to listen and learn. Each meeting felt like a safe space where judgment didn't exist and authenticity was celebrated. The transformation wasn't limited to student interactions. It extended into classrooms too. Teachers began incorporating lessons on empathy and self-expression into their curriculums, inspired by Maya's example. Mr. Alvarez, always a champion of creativity, encouraged his English class to explore themes of identity and resilience through writing assignments. Even Coach Harris, who rarely strayed from sports talk, dedicated part of his gym sessions to team-building exercises focused on trust and respect. Whitney, meanwhile, underwent her own quiet evolution. Though she still carried herself with confidence, there was a noticeable softness to her demeanor now. She no longer led the charge in mocking others or enforcing arbitrary social hierarchies. Instead, she used her influence to promote kindness, often stepping in when she saw signs of bullying. At first, some of her former followers were confused by her behavior. After all, Whitney Carter wasn't supposed to care about anyone but herself. But over time, they began to follow her lead. One afternoon, during a particularly lively session of Voices Unite, Whitney stood up to share a poem of her own. It was short and unpolished, but deeply personal, titled Breaking Chains. It reflected on her journey toward self-awareness and accountability. When she finished reading, the room erupted into applause, not because it was perfect, but because it was honest. For the first time, Whitney allowed herself to be vulnerable, and the response was overwhelmingly positive. Maya approached her afterwards, smiling warmly. "That was really good, Whitney. I'm proud of you." Whitney grinned sheepishly, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. "Thanks. I figured if you can stand up there and bare your soul, maybe I should try too." Her words reminded Maya of how far they'd both come since that day in the bathroom. Back then, their relationship had been defined by animosity and fear. Now it was built on mutual respect and growth. They weren't best friends, but they weren't enemies either, and sometimes that middle ground was enough. As spring rolled around, the school prepared for its annual Spirit Week, a tradition filled with themed dress-up days, pep rallies, and friendly competitions between grades. In years past, Spirit Week had been dominated by cliques vying for attention and status. But this year felt different. Rather than dividing students, the events brought them together. Freshmen linked arms with seniors during the scavenger hunt, and rival teams cheered each other on during dodgeball tournaments. At the center of it all was Maya, who spearheaded a collaborative mural project outside the cafeteria. Dozens of students contributed to the artwork, which depicted a tree with sprawling branches. Each leaf represented a unique voice, a reminder that every person mattered, regardless of background or interests. By the end of the week, the mural had become a symbol of unity, drawing praise from teachers, parents, and even alumni. Principal Martinez took notice of these changes and decided to honor Maya's contributions publicly. During the final assembly of the semester, he called her to the stage and presented her with a special award, the Maplewood Courage Award. As he explained its significance, the audience listened intently. This award recognizes someone who has shown extraordinary bravery in the face of adversity, Principal Martinez said, holding up the trophy. Someone who has not only overcome challenges but has also inspired others to do the same. Maya Johnson, you have changed the culture of our school for the better. Your courage, creativity, and compassion remind us all what it means to truly lead. Thank you for being a beacon of hope. When Maya accepted the award, tears welled up in her eyes. She scanned the crowd, seeing familiar faces cheering for her, friends, teachers, classmates, and even Whitney, who gave her two enthusiastic thumbs up. The overwhelming support made her realize how interconnected they all were. One act of courage could spark countless others, creating a chain reaction of positivity. Afterward, Maya spent hours reflecting on everything that had happened since that fateful day in the bathroom. She thought about how scared she'd been, standing cornered by Whitney and her friends, unsure if she'd ever escape unscathed. And yet here she was, celebrated not for fighting back aggressively, but for choosing to rise above hatred with grace and strength. She realized something important. True power wasn't about dominance or revenge. It was about using your voice to uplift, to heal, and to inspire. It was about showing others that they weren't alone, even when they felt like it most. Maya's choice to read her poem aloud hadn't just saved her, it had opened doors for others to embrace their own truths. By the end of the school year, Maplewood High looked almost unrecognizable compared to the place it had been months earlier. Hallways buzzed with laughter instead of whispers, and friendships blossomed across boundaries that once seemed insurmountable. Students carried themselves differently, with more confidence, more kindness, and more openness to understanding one another. For Maya, graduation loomed on the horizon, bringing bittersweet feelings. She knew she wouldn't forget the lessons she'd learned at Maplewood, or the people who had helped shape her journey. As she walked across the stage to receive her diploma, she paused briefly, looking out at the sea of caps and gowns. Among them were faces she'd never imagined having connections with. Whitney, smiling proudly. Tessa, waving enthusiastically. Brianna, giving her a thumbs up. Even Mr. Alvarez, seated in the faculty section, held up a sign that read, "Proud of you." When Maya finally stepped off the stage, clutching her diploma tightly, she felt a deep sense of fulfillment. This chapter of her life might be ending, but the story she'd written would continue to resonate long after she left. Her courage had ignited a movement, proving that even the smallest actions could create monumental change. Years later, when alumni returned to visit Maplewood High, they often stopped by the mural outside the cafeteria. New leaves had been added over time, representing new voices joining the community. But the original design remained intact, a testament to the girl who had dared to stand tall when the world tried to push her down. And though Maya eventually moved on to college, pursuing her dream of becoming a published poet, she never forgot the roots of her journey. Every time she wrote a new poem, she remembered the power of vulnerability, the courage it took to face fear head-on and emerge stronger on the other side. Because ultimately, she knew, words could heal wounds, bridge divides, and light the way forward, for herself and for others. In the end, Maya's story wasn't just about surviving high school. It was about thriving despite adversity, inspiring those around her and leaving behind a legacy of hope. And as long as people shared their stories, her message would live on, a reminder that everyone, no matter how small or invisible they might feel, has the potential to make a difference.